Based on my conflict style assessment, my highest score was obliging, which basically means that I try to keep peace and harmony and avoid making conflict worse. I also scored high in compromising and dominating, which basically means that while I try to maintain peace, at the end of the day, I can still stand up for myself when something is important to me. I think this connects to more collectivist values because in collectivist cultures, they often prioritize friendships, cooperations, and group harmony over individual wants. In my experience, culture and upbringing definitely affect the way people handle conflict. For example, in my family, I was always taught to respect others, avoid unnecessary arguments, and to try to think about how my actions could potentially affect somebody else or make them feel, just in general, stuff like that. Because of this, I tend to put other people's feelings above my own just to avoid tension. At work or in group projects, I like to let everybody talk and listen and make sure everybody feels understood before I give out my opinion. However, I also learned that if I'm too quiet, my own needs can be ignored or not even cared about. So I've been trying to find more balance between keeping peace and speaking up for myself. The reflection that interested me the most was the privilege assessment and reflection because it made me think more deeply about experiences that people may be taking for granted. Before taking the assessment, I understood privilege in a general way, and I wasn't really thinking about how privilege may exist in someone's life, but in another person's life, that can come off as a disadvantage for them. It helped me get out of my old mindset that privilege was something that you either had or you don't. In my head, privilege was black and white, but in reality, privilege is black, white, gray, and all the shades and above because it's a spectrum. One takeaway that I had from this assignment was how everyday experiences can be different for someone depending on their background. Things like feeling safe, being treated fairly, or not being judged based on their appearance are not experiences that everybody shares equally. Another takeaway is that privilege may often be seen as invisible to the people who do have it because those advantages feel normal to them. This assignment encouraged me to become more self-aware and to think more critically about experience of others instead of just assuming everyone moves through life the same way. The article that I found the most interesting was the when is it okay to wear an item from another culture and when is it appropriation? Because it explained the difference between a cultural appreciation versus a cultural appropriation in a way that felt realistic and easy to understand. Before reading it, I mostly thought that appropriation only happened when somebody was purposely wearing something else from a different culture and intentionally wearing it in a disrespectful way or in a way that mocked the culture. However, the article explained that even if someone doesn't mean to in a harmful way, it can still come off as disrespectful depending on the concept and the privilege involved. One example that stood out to me was when Kim Kardashian was wearing Fulani braids and called them Bo Derek braids. The article explained that black women have been wearing these types of hairstyles for generations, but they are often stereotyped or judged negatively for them. But when it comes to celebrities, they're praised for wearing the same hairstyles. That example helped me realize how privilege changes the way society reacts to people. Another example that stood out to me was turbans and head coverings. The article explained that minority groups may experience discrimination or harmful stereotypes for wearing cultural or religious clothing, while celebrities or people outside the culture can wear similar items as fashion trend without facing the same treatment. This interested me because it showed how cultural appropriation is connected to privilege, stereotypes, and respect for other cultures rather than just a self of fashion itself. The first most valuable lesson that I learned in this course was intercultural communication and conflict styles. Learning about collectivist versus individualist cultures helped me understand why people would handle disagreements differently. For an example, some people may prefer direct communication, while others prefer keeping peace and harmony. This connected to my own conflict style, and understanding these differences helped me become more patient and open-minded when communicating with people from different backgrounds. The second most valuable lesson that I learned was microaggressions and how small comments or assumptions can affect people over time. Before this class, I mainly thought that discrimination had to be obvious or at least intentional, but I learned that repeated small comments can make people feel stereotyped and or excluded. The lesson about microaggressions changed the way that I think about communication because it made me realize how important it is to think about language, jokes, and assumptions in everyday conversations. The third and final most valuable lesson that I learned was code switching and identity. In this course, I learned how many people, including myself, change the way they speak, act, or present themselves depending on the environment that they are in. This can happen at school, work, or around different groups of people in order to fit in or avoid judgment. Learning about switching helped me realizing how exhausting it can be for some people to constantly adjust themselves or change a part of themselves or just becoming an entirely different person just to be accepted. It also made me think more about authenticity and how culture and identity can influence communication in everyday life.